My name is Melissa Jeter, Librarian Specialist for the Art Tatum African American Resource Center, located in the Kent branch of the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library. Welcome to the Art Tatum African American Resource Center's Oral History Project, the Edrene Cole Collection. Dr. Edrene Cole was a local African American historian and educator who began collecting the stories of noteworthy Toledoans in the African American community. With this oral history project, the Art Tatum African American Resource Center honors her memory and her work. Join me and University of Toledo Professor of Anthropology, Dr. Willie McCarther, as Toledo's very own African Americans share the stories of their lives.
Hi, I'm Dr. Willie McCarther. In this segment, we're pleased to welcome Mr. Fred Russell. Mr. Russell, welcome and thank you for joining us.
I'm pleased to be here.
Mr. Russell, I know that you came to Toledo when you were about 17 years old to stay, I think. But let's go back and talk about your life before you got to Toledo a little bit. Tell me when and where you were born.
I was born at 921 Wash Street in Little Rock, Arkansas, September 15, 1929.
1929.
Yes.
Okay, so then you grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. What kind of work did your parents do?
Well, my mother did domestic work. She died when she was 25 and I was 5.
Okay.
I went to live with my aunt
Okay.
and my 2 sisters.
Okay.
And I stayed with my aunt from 5 to 13.
5 to 13. Okay. What was your mother's name?
My mother's name was Aletha
Aletha. Okay. And your father?
Morris Russell.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any other brothers or sisters?
I had 2 sisters and I had 1 brother.
1 brother.
There's 1 sister deceased
Okay.
and brother deceased.
With his.
I have 1 sister been living at 1156 Oakwood since 1948.
Is that
she
right?
She still lives there.
Okay. Because is that the one that you came to live with or to visit when you first got
visit.
here? Okay. Okay. Let's go back and talk a little bit about Arkansas. When you were living, go ahead, please.
In 1935, when my mother passed away, my aunt did domestic work too, earning $3.50 car fare per week.
Is that right?
And they give you what they wanted to give you on the job to bring home.
Okay, okay.
It wasn't my brother-in-law at the time. He said, your mother's dead, and you're gonna have to find a way to earn some money. So this box of shoe polish will keep some money in your pocket, and you don't have to steal or rob nobody. So I learned how to shine shoes in 1935, and I've been doing it off and on ever since 1935. In my neighborhood, you learn how to either sell some wood, some ice. You got on the ice man's truck, and you'd make some money every day.
Every day, okay.
Every day, put in your pocket. You go downtown and work in hotels, shine shoes, bellhop, anything. I did all those things before.
So growing up then, in order to survive, you were able to shine shoes, and kids had other ways to earn money also.
As you sold wood, most people didn't have no gas. Some did, but most didn't.
Okay.
And in the neighborhood, you either sold ice or the wood for other people, and they pay you a percentage of it. That's how you learn the entrepreneurship.
Okay.
So by doing things for other people.
Okay. So now, as you were growing up in Arkansas, in Little Rock, what kind of schools were you able to attend?
I attended East End in my neighborhood school. Most of the teachers were good, kind. Some were prejudiced. some weren't, and they all were black. And what you learn this in your neighborhood first. And I went to Dunbar High School for a couple of years.
Okay.
Then my aunt's wife come to Little Rock, and she saw how things were in 1942. And we left and went to Hammond, and I had an uncle in Chicago, and two uncles in Hammond.
Okay.
So I stayed with one of the uncles
In Hammond.
for, I'd say, about 6 months. I went back to Little Rock. Things hadn't got no better down there economically. So I joined the Navy on my own at 13.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. And one of the teachers, principals, was either drafted in the Navy or he volunteered. He inducted me in the Navy, Dr. Christoph, who she knows very, very well. And Dr. Guy was in my homeroom when I went to junior high school in Little Rock. Fred T. Guy, that is my friend. He was a very kind young man.
Is that right?
He lived on the best side of the tracks all of his life, but he never scorned anybody that lived in my neighborhood.
Is that right?
He was always friendly, friendly guy. And well, it was just, when I joined the Navy, I didn't know it was going to be as rough as it was at 13.
But let me make sure I'm clear though. Somebody allowed you to join the Navy at age 13?
No, they didn't allow me. I always could count pretty good. And math, I could do math pretty good. And I said I was 17. And I got in, didn't have no computers at that time. And I was 13. My sister signed, and I wondered she wanted me gone because I was not too easy to deal with. And I went to the Navy, and I the only state I went in. July the 12th, 1943. I got out September 12th, 1943. I was just in a short while, but it let me know what the military was all about.
Interesting, interesting.
So, in order for me to get out, my aunt had to come. By this time, my aunt had left Little Rock and living in Indiana, Hammond, Indiana.
Okay.
She and her husband had to come from Hammond, Indiana, to Great Lake, Illinois, with my birth certificate, for me in order to get out.
To get you out because
Get
you.
me out. And they didn't let me see her or anything when she came, but they kept me a few weeks after that.
Well,
and I eventually got out.
Well, now, okay. Once you got out, did you get in trouble with anybody because once you got out?
The only trouble I got in was when I left Hammond, which is about a 15-mile ride on the L to Chicago from Hammond, about 15 minutes or less. And I caught a cab from my uncle's house in Chicago from 33rd Street to 64th to catch the bus to go back out in Hammond.
Okay.
35-cent ride.
Really?
And SPs saw me. I had a dilly bag on my shoulder that they gave me when I left the Navy. But you put your bag, certain things in your bag, plus my traveling clothes. They picked me up and took me back to 47th Street, cold in the wintertime, very little money. And I had to walk in order to get back to Hammond from 47th and South Park back to 64th Street. And those are long blocks. And when they talk about the hawk, they don't be joking. Yes. So
the hawk was biting, huh?
it was biting, and I had to walk. That's the only bad experience in Chicago that I had.
Really? Okay, but let me go back a little bit and talk about when you were in Arkansas a little bit, because I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Although I know, so as you're growing up in Arkansas, did you go to church in Arkansas?
I went to Gospel Temple Church in my neighborhood under Reverend Mack.
Reverend Mac? Okay.
in the 1930s.
Did you go often?
You had to go. You had to go often.
You had to go. So somebody made you go just about.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, when you went, did you have how many suits did you have?
For as long as my mother was living, I seemed to have everything I wanted and need, plus the love. My father, I never lived with, but I always lived with him. And he bought me a pinstripe suit, a new hat, shirt, shoes, and socks and underwear in 1939.
Okay.
And I promised myself that I would never, as long as I had health and strength, be raggedy again. And I took it upon myself at 10 to buy and wear clothes. And that's what I do.
Well, looking at you today, I think you held true to that promise because you're looking pretty sharp there, Mr. Russell.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
And I try to live up to it. That's what happened to me on that. But I also, a white boy sold me. He was a good friend of mine. He lived across, and they always lived in our neighborhood. And they were poor as we were. And he sold me a pair of skates for a nickel in the mid-1930s. And I've been roller skating ever since. I never will forget him as long as I live. I'll think about him often because it kept me out of trouble. Fights, different things. And I almost got into trouble once with a good friend of mine in Toledo, which I'm jumping the gun many years later.
Is that right? Okay.
He said, Fred, they don't skate in jail. You know the passion I have for it. He said, they don't skate in jail, Fred. And I threw the knife away, and I never carried one since.
Is that right?
Yeah, I said, you know me, you understand?
That's right. If you can be able to skate and be free, you got to be free to skate.
Yeah, and if you act a fool, if you're a skater, and if you act a fool, everyone sees you.
There you go.
Everyone in the rink.
Absolutely.
Because you stand out as a fool. And who wants to be a fool?
Nobody, I hope. Nobody. Okay, let's fast forward and talk about Toledo. Now, you told me that you came to Toledo twice before you moved here.
Yeah.
1947 to visit your sister.
Yes.
And you came back to live.
No, I come back again in early 48.
Okay.
The Union Station was being opened, and then that's the biggest day I saw in Toledo. When the Union Station opened in Toledo, they had a parade from downtown Toledo to the Union Station, and thousands of people really turned out, and it was enjoyable because Toledo was really on the map in the mid-1940s.
1940s.
It was on the map for its jobs and friendliness,
Okay.
and people in the neighborhoods were just bubbling with friendliness. It was kind.
Okay. Let me ask you this then. So, when you first got here to live, who did you live with?
I lived with my sister a short length of time, in rooms in every block on both sides of the street, from Hoyk back downwardly. It was rooms for rent, and people lived with families. All didn't have big houses, but if you had big houses, you'd have more than one room.
Okay.
And the room rent was about $8 or less per week. And that was very cheap.
Really?
And although you didn't make much money, but you'd think you could make $1.25 a day to sleep. And the food, you could get a meal, a full meal in so many different places for less than $1.
Really?
Things that you like.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. So, when you got here and as you're sort of living, were there, you mentioned black restaurants, but were there restaurants in Toledo that black people couldn't go to?
Oh, yes. Yes. You got some now that they don't want you there. So they accept you, but they don't want you. And you got some with notations on the doorway, who they want, in small letters. You understand? but they got it on the doors as of today.
Sure, sure.
Yes.
But there were places then, though, there were restaurants. How about movie theaters? Were there theaters that people couldn't go to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there were theaters that you could go to.
You can go to. Okay, good, good. So now let's go back and talk about the kinds of work that you have done since you've been here. Walk me through the kinds of work that you've done since you've been in Toledo.
Well, those hard, nasty jobs, I worked them, but I didn't stay on them long. I worked for National Supply, make hardware for oil wells, and I haven't had really too many hard jobs. I worked at Smith Cafeteria downtown. I worked at Cornell's, one of your leading department stores when the downtown was flourishing. And I worked at the Wood Hotel, which was really a hotel at the time.
Okay.
And I worked at the Mill Bar. That was a cocktail lounge
Okay, okay, good.
on Madison Street. And mostly I worked for myself.
You work for your self-employed?
Yes.
Well then, what kind of services have you offered then as a self-employed person? What have you done?
I had a newsstand at Shoeshine Parlor at 1322 and 24 door. At first I had the 1324. Various people moved out. I got both sides. I got a place where I could live on one side and work on the other side.
Okay, so then you were an entrepreneur then. You were a businessman.
I have been. I'm not no more, but I have.
But then you were though.
Yes.
Okay, okay. So outside of doing that, what else have you done?
I wrote numbers
Okay.
and run poker games
Okay.
and shot pool.
Let me make sure I'm clear. When you say you ran numbers, you don't mean the legal kind of numbers.
Well, it's the same numbers, but it was illegal at the time. Okay. The same numbers,
Okay.
but it was illegal at the time.
Okay, gotcha.
And you made a percentage, the percentage that people are getting today. It used to be in the neighborhood. That's how most people thrive, by doing the other person a favor by picking up their numbers, because everybody can get to play in the stores like you do today.
Okay, so explain that to me then, that whole process. So you had somebody, a person wanted to play numbers, somebody would go pick them up.
Yes, I was a pickup man. I wasn't a bookie. No, I was not a bookie. I was a pickup man.
Okay.
See, in time, if you're fortunate, you might get lucky and work yourself up to booking.
Okay.
But that takes a lot of mathematics
Okay.
and money.
And money. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes, it's mostly what I did.
Okay. So you did the numbers and what else?
I painted. If people want the bathroom, kitchen painted, especially at the holiday time. I did that. Help people in the neighborhood.
Now, you told me earlier that you had spent a good part of your life shining shoes. Tell me about that part of your life.
Well, the fruitful part of it in Arkansas, it was a Greek man had 36 chairs. He only used 18 of them downtown Little Rock. He charged a dime for low-cut shoes at the time,
Okay.
and 35 cents for boots, because the war was on and they wore leather boots in the service at
Right.
the time.
Right. Okay.
And he give you 2 cents for shining the low cut. He kept 8. He gave you 7 cents of the 35 cents when you did that. But the tips were very good. The people, women and men, got shine. When a lady got on the stand, you had an apron. You drape it over her knees, and they got shine, and they tipped. But the tips were very good. And the man was a real, he and his wife both, they were really, truly nice people. And you make enough money, you felt for that day, you leave, somebody else take your spot, and you hustle on the sidewalk. And then you get your customer in. if the person wants you, they tell you that I want him, I want them.
So then that was the beginning of your shoe shining career then.
That was, well, in the neighborhood, that's not much money in the neighborhood. So after you learn, you go downtown.
Okay.
And that's the way that worked out.
Okay.
But the eating situation downtown, you ate the same food that white folk ate. They ate on one side, you ate on another side. Now this is downtown, and this is not in every restaurant, but they had various restaurants with very good food. And then, as you grew a little bit older, if somebody worked in the hotels, you worked in the main dining room, and you learned a little adequacy. You learned a little different thing. Each stage, you picked up a little something else.
Okay.
Now, if you like working in the dining room, better you do hopping bells. Well, you didn't always get a choice, but whatever was available, you took it.
Okay.
And you run with it, as guys say. So that's about it, that on it.
Okay. But you've been shining shoes. I mean, you've been doing that either full-time or part-time almost all your life, haven't you?
Yes. See, now they tell you about my Kansas City experience.
Well, then tell me about that.
See, like when I left Chicago and went back to Little Rock in '44, and things were still bad. And I said, I got to get away from here.
Now, when you said bad, what do you mean bad?
Well, there's very little few dollars that when you under a certain age, I got away with a lot of things because of the way I wear this hat. Because people didn't question if you kept your mouth shut. And I could get indoors where I wasn't supposed to be. And I've always been around music, like Count Basie, Fat Swallow, and all those people. I was in the same building with those people. They were grown and I was like this growing up. I sat on Fat Swallow's knee in Little Rock when I was 3. You know, they'd be playing music late at night. And he said, give me that boy, put him on my knee. And Count Basie, I know the name of the places where I saw him at. Count Basie used to play at the tea room in my neighborhood after he done played a big gig in another neighborhood. And they would party all night, but people want to hear. Plus the hay rides, the churches sponsored in the rock in the 30s. All the musicians and things come there, not just them.
Now you mentioned that the hay rides. What were the purpose of the hay rides?
Church give play rides in all the little cities. Arkansas is a small state. And all the small cities where it was convenient for everybody to come in wagon and horse or truck or car. You got there and rode your horse or anything. You come and they sponsored, the churches sponsored this.
They sponsored the hay ride, but once you got to where you were going, what was the activity that was going on there?
The music, in order for you not to be stupid, you know something about the culture of what's going on in the world. You wouldn't got a chance to see these people had not they gave it. And they're the ones that gave it.
So the churches gave it.
The churches.
And they made
sure
people could get there.
Get there. You paid the kid, he would pay if he rode on someone's truck, 25 cents. Or somebody would come up with something. If you was determined to go and it was okay with your parents, you would wind up going.
Okay.
Some people weren't interested, some were interested. But it wouldn't necessarily be in Little Rock. It would be in one of those small cities where another city is maybe 10 miles or 15 miles from there. No more than 25 or 30 miles from there. But they got there. And it was real royal time. Just like I'm skipping May Day in Little Rock. That was a big day, this time of the month, year. In May, all the schools from all over, they would come to May Day at that Central Park stadium, you understand? Now this is way before, this is like 30 years or more before the Little Rock integration thing. But we felt, when you were young, that we were integrated if you was a skater, because we'd catch behind the bus and line up, like 15 or 20 of us, and hold on to the bus and ride down 9th Street, which is not in my neighborhood, wherever that was smooth pavement, and you had your skates, you had fun.
Now, these are white and black kids, or just black kids?
Black kids.
Black kids?
Yeah, black kids, yes. But downtown, like I said about that restaurant, the whites is on one side and you on the other, and the black cooks and white cooks is back there cooking and passing the food out. Black on one side, white on another side.
But now, did the blacks and whites go to the same, they order the food from the same counter?
You got a counter over here, and it's just like this. It's the counter. You on this side, they on that side. And you got a partition between you.
But it was all separate?
But the food come out the same pot. Same pot. Yes, now that was 30s, early 40s, because domestic, you had it, just like Toledo used to be. Your downtown was full of black people working for mostly nothing, you understand? Very little. That's why things were so cheap. And when I say food and lodging in Toledo, Ohio, you couldn't beat it in the 40s and early 50s.
Because people had these big houses, they would chop them up and rent the rooms out to people. You pay $8 a week or whatever.
You know, well, sometimes they rent them to 2 people, 1 room to 2 people.
Okay.
Yeah, like in Chicago, it's more than 2. When you got out of the bed, somebody else was getting in the bed because people was working around the clock. The war was on, and people didn't have no place to stay. We stacked on top of one another. I mean, literally. I mean, that's in most cities, but some cities had more to offer, and Toledo was just one of those good cities.
So then, how would you how has Toledo treated you? How has your life been in Toledo?
Well, I managed only to go to get in trouble, like writing numbers a couple of times and arguing with my mother-in-law. That's arguing, not fighting, but arguing with my mother-in-law. So I've been blessed on that. And I had a slogan in telling the world, if I can stay out of jail and the hospital, I got it made. And I try to do that. I have tried to do it.
Okay. And you told me earlier that you have been skating all your life too.
All my life.
Okay. So do you still skate?
Yes, I do.
How often do you skate now?
Well, once a week, but I'm invited every night free. As a senior citizen, they don't charge me.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes, at Ohio Skate, they don't charge
They
me.
don't charge you. Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. Let me ask you this. When you first came here, and I've asked different people about Dorr Street. What's your memory of what Dorr Street was like as far as the places, the restaurants, and stuff like that?
At Division and Dorr, there was a large man. His name was Bill Maxwell. He owned a large house in the 400 block of Woodland.
Okay.
He didn't back up, not as a bully, but as a man. He stood tall like he was. His son had jukeboxes when I first met him.
Okay.
I met his son in Hammond, Indiana, coming to visit some relatives. And one of the relatives moved from Hammond, Indiana to Toledo. Now, Mr. Maxwell, he ran a wine and beer place and food. And he had so many customers. He had customers and live music. The place wasn't fabulous, but it was a place where they played music.
Okay.
And people came and ate.
Okay.
Now going from Division on Dorr Street, you had the Dixie Theater, which was a black theater. I don't know who owned it. Then you had Ellis's gas station, which is a nice gas station, very clean. And next to the theater, Mr. Lester Smith had tourist home for a big building, house, big house. He chopped it up and made where people come to town, they'd have some place to sleep. And he had 4 such places where there was big houses as the years passed that he made tourist homes out of because of no hotel accommodations. And
let me stop you there. When you say no hotel accommodations, what do you mean by that?
well, what you could afford mainly. You couldn't go in all of them, but some of them you could go in downtown. But you couldn't go to all of them.
Okay. Let me ask you this. On a Friday, Saturday night, 1950s, 1960s in Toledo, where would a person find you?
1950s, mostly at the Belmont Enterprise on Nebraska, 385 and 387 Nebraska. That's where they would find me if I wasn't working at Ken Warlow's downtown. See, the best jobs that paid the most money is the time that most young black people are having fun. And you lose good jobs if you take off. See, the hours between 6 and 2:30 in the type of work that I did. If I wasn't working for myself, I was working with somebody else in these restaurants and things, or nightclubs where they hired Ella Fitzgerald would be singing at downtown restaurant. But that's what happened there. But the Belmont Enterprise was a 10-house bowling alley, and a friend of mine talked him into putting a skating rink upstairs, and it's the best thing that I've seen in Toledo, barring nothing. The Belmont Enterprise was the only thing that I've seen where the masses of black people in Toledo have thrived, and no bowling alley no more. I don't understand it, but maybe it's not for me to understand.
So then you think skating was an important part of the black culture then in a way in Toledo?
Yes, I would say in Toledo, Ohio, not so far of skaters spinning in the air, but rhythm skating. I think Toledo is in the top 5 in anywhere at the time. At the time, you don't have no programs anymore of today because, number one, you don't have the music for skating anymore. You don't have no program. You don't have no together. People see, like I was saying about being a fool, see, people today are scared to talk to one another. Skating, they had a program where you touched, you skated with one another. You understand? You were friendly with one another. You wasn't trying to always get a girlfriend. You understand? Or a girl trying to get a boyfriend. That's a part of it, but not the main part. The main part was to have fun. And that's what you had at the Belmont Enterprise. And there were little skirmishes come up. But usually when something like that happened, something bad happened to the person that was involved, where the notoriety would stop him maybe later on in life. Okay.
Let me ask you this. Now, I can imagine you slowed down a little bit now with your skating, but back in the day, how good of a skater were you?
I leave that for others to judge. It's not for me to judge. I just do my best. I do my best when I was in rare form. In the last year and a half, I haven't been the best in rare form, but I do. If they play the music, I will skate.
Well, let's go back though. Yeah. When you was in your rare form, when you was at the height of your game, how good of a skater were you? Now be honest with me.
I'm being honest. That won't change. You know, I never was. Let the other people pin the roses on you. You don't pin roses on yourself. You understand? I love to skate, and everybody know I love to skate, because I still do it.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
okay. It sounds as if you had a good life. Would you do anything different with your life? If you had to go back and do something different, what would it be?
go back to Kansas City and enjoy that good music and those good times that I had. Music, that's the most cultured city that I ever been in. For a poor man, I was a boy when I went to Kansas City in 1944. I was 15 years old in Kansas City, on my own. In those other cities, I was on my own too, after 13. But Kansas City, I worked at the post office as a clerk, just from October to January. You didn't have UPS and all these other carriers. You had the United States Post Office, and they would hire you. I put my age up again to 18, and they hire you from October to January because the mail was heavy. I signed up for clerk. I said, no, that won't work because I don't have the proper clothes for the elements outside. So I changed it to clerk, got more money, and worked those 3.5 months, and it was good.
Let me ask you, now, you put your age up twice. Once you put it up from 13 to 17, and you did it again. What's up with that? Why are you putting your age up like that?
To get a job. I had to survive. And I had no 13 and 15-year-olds.
Okay.
And I could pass. I know how to act. Yeah. But that's why I put it up. Okay. I had to survive. I don't know how to steal. Because I know you get caught. Somebody watching you. I don't know who. Somebody's watching you.
Right, absolutely.
If you're a thief, somebody is watching you. And you don't know who. You just don't know. And I didn't steal. Yeah, that's my life.
Well, it sounds like you've lived a good, honest life. You've been a clean dresser, and you've learned, and you lived a good, honest life.
I tried.
You tried.
I tried.
Mr. Russell, as we begin to wrap up, we talked about a number of different things. Is there anything important in your life that we have not talked about that we should?
Well, I'd have to pause on that because I'm sure there are some things that we need to talk about that I haven't talked about. But all in all, I think it's been a good interview. You understand? Whatever. You understand? And I didn't talk about I working for Chicago and Southern Airlines before I left and went to Kansas City. And then in Chicago and Southern Airlines, which is Delta today, I worked for them. I made nice money. I made more money than grown people.
Did you really?
$18.75 per week, get paid every 2 weeks. That was a war bond, $18.75.
That's pretty good money.
You understand? It was at that time for a boy.
Yeah.
Plus, I caught 3 planes, and the planes were more than the salary. Plus, I could shine shoot if I desired.
Sure.
If I wanted to stay around and shine, I didn't have to. But if I wanted to stay at the end of the route, but they paid on time, and it was clean. Plus, I could go downtown and clean up the office downtown.
Right.
That was altogether extra. But it was hard to get your money. And when I work, I want my money right there. The guy, he had to send papers here and send papers there. After I washed the windows and did what he wanted me to do.
You want to get paid?
I want to get paid. I need that money in my pocket.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Russell, this is my last question. Right now, how do most people in Toledo know you? What do they know you most as?
Skating and shining.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Mr. Russell, it's been such a delight speaking with you. Thanks ever so much for taking time out of your schedule to come down and have this conversation with me. I appreciate it.
Well, anytime.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Anytime. And I told you the truth.
You told me the truth. There you go. That's the important thing.
Yeah, I'm sure I left out some things that I might would like to interject, but I told you the truth.
You told me the truth, and that's key.